On October 8, 1871, around 9 p.m., a wall of flame and wind hit the lumber town of Peshtigo, Wisconsin. By the next morning, about 1,500 people were dead, and some estimates run higher because the records burned too. So how did the deadliest wildfire in U.S. history happen on the same night as the Great Chicago Fire, and still fade from America's memory? Peshtigo was the kind of place you could hear before you saw. Axes and saws, wagons on wooden boards, and the steady knock of hammers repairing what the last week of work had worn down. Pine was everywhere, and wood was not just what the town sold, it was what the town was made of. The forests around Peshtigo were rich, and the work was relentless. Trees came down, logs rolled to the river, and the mills turned them into boards, shingles, and everyday tools. The town grew fast, and like many boom towns, it grew with the confidence that tomorrow would look like today. But 1871 was not a normal year. The region had been dry for months, and the ground and brush were ready to burn. Small fires were common, started to clear land, burn logging leftovers, or simply to cook and keep warm. By early October, people were used to smoke on the horizon. Some days the air felt dusty, and ash drifted down like a dirty snow. It was stressful, but it had become familiar, which is a dangerous thing for any community living close to risk. On the afternoon of October 8th, the wind rose and kept rising. What might have been scattered fires in the woods began to behave like a single force. Sparks flew farther, flames leaned forward, and embers landed in new places faster than anyone could chase them. As evening came, people in town saw a red glow that seemed to deepen by the minute. Men readied pumps and filled barrels, doing what any practical town would do with the tools they had. For a moment, it still felt like a fight they could win. Then the sound arrived. Witnesses later compared it to a roaring train, and it came with heat that did not belong in an autumn night. Flames burst from the tree line, and suddenly the fire was not creeping. It was rushing, throwing embers ahead of itself like a storm. The town's greatest advantage, its river, became the only plan anyone could agree on. People ran toward the Peshtigo River as buildings began to ignite, not one at a time, but in many places at once. In a town built from wood, the fire found fuel in every direction. Those who reached the water learned a cruel lesson. The river could shield them, but it could not make the air safe. Many had to keep splashing water over their heads, ducking down when the heat surged, and fighting panic while the night felt endless. Hours passed in darkness, smoke, and cold water. Some people survived because they held on to debris, to each other, to anything that kept them steady. Others did not because they failed to run, but because the conditions became impossible. When morning finally came, Peshtigo was almost gone. The fire had swept beyond the town, tearing through nearby communities and forests across a wide swath of northeastern Wisconsin. The burned area would be measured in the millions of acres, and the damage would be described in numbers that were staggering for the time. Counting the dead was harder than anyone wanted to admit. Whole families disappeared, and the town's records disappeared with them. Many victims were buried without names because there was no one left who could identify them. And while survivors tried to understand what had happened, the rest of the country was looking somewhere else. That same night, Chicago burned, and Chicago had telegraph lines, newspapers, and a national audience ready to listen. Peshtigo was a lumber town, and its message to the outside world was slow, scattered, and easy to overlook. In the years that followed, people rebuilt what they could. But the story never became a household lesson. The town kept a cemetery and a museum, and the community remembered, even when the nation did not. The fire became one of those American tragedies that stays local, unless someone goes looking. The truth is simple and unsettling. The Peshtigo fire was not a mystery spark, so much as a recipe. Drought, leftover fuel from logging and land clearing, small fires already burning, and a wind strong enough to turn many flames into one moving storm. When those pieces came together, a normal night became a disaster measured in minutes. Stories like this matter because they remind us what working towns and frontier communities carried on their backs. If you want more Untold American stories like this, subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Had you ever heard of the Peshtigo fire before today? And why do you think some tragedies are remembered while others fade?